Your future is created by what you do today, not tomorrow. Procrastination is not just a bad habit. It's a silent thief that steals time, opportunities, and potential. Every moment spent hesitating is a moment lost forever, pushing your dreams further out of reach. You know what needs to be done, yet something inside resists, an invisible force pulling you toward distraction, comfort, and delay. This cycle isn't just frustrating, it's life-altering. The difference between success and mediocrity isn't intelligence or talent, it's the ability to take action consistently, even when motivation fades. The truth is, your brain isn't designed to make you successful. It's designed to keep you safe, comfortable, and energy efficient. It resists discomfort, avoids effort, and prioritizes short-term pleasure over long-term rewards. That's why you put things off, not because you're lazy or incapable, but because your mind is wired to take the easy way out. But here's the good news: you can reprogram it. You can override hesitation, silence self-doubt, and train yourself to act quickly, decisively, and without overthinking. This book is not about vague inspiration or willpower alone. It's a battle plan for reclaiming control over your actions, designed to help you break free from hesitation and build an unstoppable momentum. Inside, you'll discover science-backed strategies, psychological triggers, and simple yet powerful tricks to rewire your mind for action. You'll learn how to silence excuses, push past mental resistance, and develop a mindset that thrives on execution rather than avoidance. If you are tired of watching time slip away, tired of setting goals only to abandon them, tired of feeling stuck in the same patterns, then now is the time to change. Procrastination is not a personality trait. It's a behavior, and behaviors can be changed. The most successful people in the world aren't waiting for the perfect moment. They take action despite uncertainty, discomfort, or fear. Your future depends on what you do right now. Not tomorrow, not later. Right now, the choice is in your hands. Continue living in hesitation, or take control of your actions and build the life you truly want. The strategies in this book will show you how. The only question is, are you ready to take the first step? Chapter 1. Why your brain loves to be lazy. Your brain is a master of efficiency. It always looks for ways to save energy, avoid discomfort, and keep you in a state of safety. This is why, when faced with something that requires effort, your first instinct is to delay, rationalize, or look for an easier alternative. The human brain evolved for survival, not productivity. In ancient times, wasting energy on unnecessary tasks could mean starvation or death. The brain learned to conserve energy by pushing you toward rest whenever possible. But in today's world, this instinct is no longer useful. Instead of helping you survive, it keeps you stuck, frustrated, and unfulfilled. Think about a time when you planned to do something important. Maybe it was working on a project, exercising, or learning a new skill. At the moment of action, your brain likely came up with 100 reasons to delay. You're too tired right now. It would be better to start tomorrow. You need to do more research before beginning. These thoughts feel real, but they're nothing more than excuses your brain generates to protect you from discomfort. The problem is, this automatic response creates a cycle. The more you give in to avoidance, the stronger the habit becomes. Your brain learns that putting things off is an effective way to avoid discomfort, so it keeps doing it. Before you know it, procrastination becomes second nature. The task that once seemed easy now feels overwhelming. The more time that passes, the heavier it becomes. Suddenly, what could have been done in an hour now seems impossible to even start. Every time you avoid action, You teach your brain that hesitation is the right response. But hesitation is nothing more than a mental habit. It's not a personality trait or a lack of ability. It's simply a pattern that has been repeated so many times that it feels natural. And just like any habit, it can be broken. The key is understanding that motivation doesn't come first, action does. Most people believe they need to feel ready before they can start. They wait for the perfect moment, the right energy, or the ideal circumstances. But this moment never arrives. Waiting for motivation is like waiting for a bus that never comes. You don't need motivation to start. You need to start to create motivation. Action creates momentum. The hardest part of any task is the beginning. Once you take the first step, your brain shifts gears. What once felt impossible suddenly feels manageable. This is why the smallest movement in the right direction can change everything. Your mind works like a snowball rolling down a hill. At first, it's small and slow, but with each movement, it picks up speed. The longer it rolls, the harder it is to stop. When you take action, even in the smallest way, you activate this momentum. Your brain shifts from resistance to engagement. The task no longer feels overwhelming. It feels doable. One of the most effective ways to break hesitation is to act before your brain has time to resist. The moment you feel yourself hesitating, count down from 5 and move. Stand up, open the document, start typing, put on your shoes. This simple act interrupts your brain's excuse-making process. It forces you into motion before your mind can talk you out of it. Starting small is another way to bypass resistance. If a task feels too big, break it down into something so easy that you can't say no. If you want to exercise, commit to just 2 minutes of movement. If you need to write a report, start with 1 sentence. If you need to clean, pick up just 1 item. More often than not, once you begin, you'll keep going. The hardest part is always the first step. Your environment plays a major role in your behavior. If distractions are within reach, your brain will choose them. If your phone is next to you, you will check it. If the TV is on, you will watch it. If junk food is on the counter, you will eat it. Your brain follows the path of least resistance. Change your environment, and you change your default actions. Make the things you want to do easy to start, and the things you want to avoid hard to access. Procrastination thrives on delay. The longer you wait, the harder it becomes. The more you think, the more excuses you create. The best way to silence doubt is to move before it takes hold. Once action begins, fear fades, resistance weakens, and your brain adapts to the new reality. Your brain might love being lazy, but it also loves progress. It thrives on accomplishment. The satisfaction of finishing something fuels confidence and momentum. Each completed task strengthens the habit of action. Over time, action becomes your new default. You no longer have to force yourself to start. It happens naturally. Discipline is not about forcing yourself to suffer. It's about training your brain to enjoy effort. When you see action as rewarding rather than painful, everything changes. The mind can be tricked into craving challenge instead of avoiding it. The more you associate effort with growth, the easier it becomes to push forward. Excuses lose their power when you refuse to listen. Thoughts of hesitation will still appear, but you don't have to engage with them. Recognize them for what they are: automatic responses, not truths. The more you override them, the weaker they become. With time, hesitation fades, and action takes its place. Laziness is not a fixed trait. It's a habit formed by repetition. It can be unlearned the same way it was learned. Your brain is not working against you. It's following the patterns you've taught it. Change the patterns, and you change your life. Chapter 2. The 5-second trick to beat hesitation. Hesitation is the silent killer of progress. It creeps in the moment you think about doing something important. You tell yourself you'll start in a few minutes, then an hour passes, then a whole day. Before you know it, the task sits untouched, weighing on your mind like an invisible burden. It's not that you don't want to do it. You do. You know it's important. You know it needs to get done. But something holds you back. That something is your own brain. It convinces you that waiting is the better option, that you'll be more prepared later, that now just isn't the right time. The truth is, your brain isn't trying to sabotage you. It's doing exactly what it was designed to do: keep you safe. The mind is wired to avoid uncertainty, discomfort, and anything that requires effort. It craves the familiar and resists change. This is why starting is always the hardest part. The moment you think about doing something difficult, your brain scans for danger. It detects the slightest hint of discomfort and immediately signals hesitation. That hesitation is the small gap between thought and action, and in that tiny space, everything is decided. If you act before your brain has a chance to resist, you move forward. But if you hesitate, even for a few seconds, your mind starts looking for ways to pull you back into comfort. This is why most people never take the first step. They overthink, they wait for motivation, they delay until later, and later turns into never. The good news is, hesitation can be beaten. You don't need more time, more motivation, or the perfect conditions. You need a simple trick to bypass your brain's resistance. The trick is to act before hesitation has a chance to take hold. The moment you feel yourself pausing, you count down from 5 and move. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. This breaks the cycle of overthinking and forces action before your brain can come up with an excuse. It works because it interrupts your automatic response to delay. Instead of falling into the habit of waiting, you create a new habit of immediate action. The more you do this, the more natural it becomes. Starting is never about feeling ready. It's about making the decision to move before your mind stops you. The longer you wait, the harder it gets. Action isn't something you think about, it's something you do. When you hesitate, you give your brain time to talk you out of it. The solution is to eliminate that time completely. The countdown method works because it shifts your focus from thinking to doing. It gives your brain a simple command that overrides doubt and fear. The moment you hit 1, you move. You don't question it. You don't negotiate. You don't wait for the perfect moment. You just go. Once you start using this trick, you'll notice something interesting. The task you were avoiding suddenly doesn't feel so bad. What once seemed overwhelming now feels manageable. This is because action changes the way your brain perceives difficulty. The hardest part of anything is the moment before you begin. Once you take the first step, momentum takes over. The task stops being a mountain and starts being a simple series of steps. People often think they need motivation to start, but motivation is unpredictable. Some days it's there, most days it's not. If you rely on motivation, you'll never be consistent. What you need instead is a system that forces action, even when you don't feel like it. The 5-second trick is that system. It removes the option to hesitate, replacing it with an automatic response. Over time, this builds a habit of instant action. Your brain stops associating work with pain and starts seeing it as normal. Every time you use this trick, you strengthen your ability to take control. The more you override hesitation, the weaker it becomes. Instead of getting stuck in cycles of procrastination, you become the kind of person who takes action without overthinking.
You stop delaying and start doing. The more you act, the easier it gets. Your brain learns that effort is not something to be feared. It learns that starting is never as hard as it seems. Momentum is a powerful force. The more you move, the less resistance you feel. When you hesitate, your brain builds resistance. When you act, you break through it. The 5-second trick is a tool to shift you from stuck to moving in an instant. It removes the weight of indecision and replaces it with forward motion. The difference between people who succeed and those who stay stuck isn't talent, intelligence, or luck. It's the ability to act before hesitation wins. Successful people don't feel ready all the time. They don't wait for motivation or the perfect conditions. They start before they feel like it. They take the first step before their brain can stop them. That's what separates action takers from procrastinators. It's not about feeling inspired. It's about training yourself to move, even when you don't want to. Every time you feel yourself hesitating, remember that it's just a habit. It's not a permanent part of you. It's a learned behavior, and anything learned can be unlearned. The more you break the cycle of hesitation, the less power it has over you. The trick is simple. The next time you catch yourself pausing, count down from 5. The moment you reach 1, take action. Stand up, make the call, send the email, open the document, step outside. Whatever it is, do it before your mind has time to resist. Hesitation only lasts a few seconds. If you can beat it in that small window, you win. The 5-second trick is the easiest way to do that. It's fast, it's simple, and it works. It removes the need for motivation and replaces it with instant action. No more waiting, no more excuses, no more overthinking. Just 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
Chapter 3. How to start when you don't feel like it. There are moments when the thought of starting feels impossible. The task is right in front of you, yet you sit there staring at it, waiting for something to change. You tell yourself that you'll begin in a few minutes, but those minutes turn into hours, sometimes even days. The weight of inaction builds, making the task feel heavier than it actually is. The longer you wait, the worse it gets. It's not that you're incapable or unwilling, it's that your brain has convinced you that starting is too difficult. The mind has a way of exaggerating effort. It turns a simple action into a massive obstacle. What should be a 5-minute task feels like climbing a mountain. This is why starting is always the hardest part. Once you begin, everything gets easier. The resistance you felt before suddenly disappears. The work that seemed overwhelming no longer feels that way. You realize that the hardest thing wasn't the task itself, but the act of beginning. There is a simple way to break through this mental barrier. Instead of waiting to feel ready, you shrink the task down to its easiest form. If you don't feel like writing a report, tell yourself you'll just write 1 sentence. If you can't get yourself to exercise, commit to doing just 1 push-up. If you're avoiding cleaning, pick up just 1 item. When you remove the pressure of doing everything at once, the resistance fades. The mind no longer sees the task as overwhelming, so the excuse to delay disappears. Once you start, a strange thing happens. That 1 sentence turns into a paragraph. That single push-up leads to a short workout, and picking up 1 item often leads to cleaning the whole space. The trick is that action creates momentum. The moment you move, your brain shifts from hesitation to engagement. What once felt difficult now feels natural. You don't stop after 1 sentence because your mind is already in motion. You don't stop after 1 push-up because your body is already moving. The biggest mistake people make is believing they need to feel motivated first. They wait for the right mood, the perfect energy, or some external push to get started. But motivation is unreliable. It comes and goes. If you depend on it, you'll never be consistent. The truth is, action itself creates motivation. Once you start, even in the smallest way, the feeling of resistance fades. Your brain recognizes that the effort isn't as bad as it imagined. The more you act, the more motivated you become. If you want to break free from procrastination, you must stop negotiating with yourself. The moment you decide to do something, you act immediately. No mental debates, no thinking about how hard it will be, no giving yourself extra time. The more you think, the more excuses you'll create. The mind is clever. It will always find reasons to delay. If you don't give it time to do that, you take control. There will always be days when you don't feel like doing anything. Waiting for the perfect mood is a trap. The key is to focus on showing up, even when you don't feel like it. Even if you don't do your best work, even if it's not perfect, even if you only put in a small effort, it still counts. What matters is that you start. Progress is built on consistency, not perfection. Your brain naturally resists discomfort. It will always push you toward what is easy, familiar, and safe. But the moment you push back, the resistance weakens. Every time you start, despite not feeling like it, you train your mind to respond differently. Over time, taking action becomes automatic. You stop seeing tasks as obstacles and start viewing them as simple steps. The less you hesitate, the more natural it becomes to get things done. It's easy to get stuck in a cycle of overthinking. The more you analyze, the harder it becomes to move. Action is the only way to break this cycle. Instead of planning endlessly, instead of worrying about the perfect approach, you take the first step. No matter how small, no matter how imperfect, movement is the only thing that matters. Thinking about progress does nothing. Only action moves you forward. Your environment also plays a role in how easily you start. If distractions are nearby, your brain will always choose them. If your phone is next to you, you will check it. If the TV is on, you will watch it. If junk food is in sight, you will eat it. Your brain follows the path of least resistance. If you want to make starting easier, design your space in a way that removes distractions and makes the right choice effortless. Place your workout clothes where you can see them, keep your workspace clean, and make the first step as easy as possible. The less effort required to start, the more likely you are to take action. Every day you face small decisions that determine whether you move forward or stay stuck. Do you hit snooze or get out of bed? Do you start the task or delay it? Do you make an excuse or take action? These moments may seem insignificant, but they shape your habits, your mindset, and ultimately your life. Success isn't built on huge bursts of motivation. It's built on small, consistent actions that over time lead to big results. The hardest part of anything is the beginning. Once you start, the resistance fades. The work stops feeling like a burden and starts feeling like progress. The secret is not to wait until you feel like it. The secret is to start in the smallest way possible. Shrink the task, remove hesitation, eliminate distractions, and act before your brain has time to resist. The more you do this, the more natural it becomes. Before you know it, action is no longer something you force yourself to do. It's simply who you are. Chapter 4. How to trick yourself into loving hard work. Hard work has a reputation for being something people dread. It's often seen as exhausting, frustrating, and something to be avoided whenever possible. Most people don't struggle because they lack goals or ambition. They struggle because they don't enjoy the process of getting there. If something feels like a punishment, you'll resist it. If it feels like something forced upon you, you'll find ways to escape. The key to long-term success isn't just about discipline or willpower. It's about changing the way your brain sees effort. Instead of viewing hard work as suffering, you have to trick yourself into loving it. The human brain is wired for pleasure. It naturally gravitates toward things that feel good and away from things that feel difficult. This is why entertainment, social media, and comfort are so appealing. They provide instant satisfaction with almost no effort. Hard work, on the other hand, often comes with delayed rewards. You don't immediately see results, and your brain doesn't get an instant hit of satisfaction. But if you can find a way to connect effort with pleasure, you'll remove the resistance. One of the easiest ways to shift this mindset is by making the process more enjoyable. People who love what they do aren't forcing themselves to work. They've simply found a way to make it rewarding. The work itself may be challenging, but they've attached meaning, purpose, or excitement to it. If you approach your tasks with dread, every moment will feel like a struggle. If you find ways to make the experience engaging, the difficulty fades into the background. Your brain releases dopamine when it anticipates pleasure. This is why people get addicted to social media, junk food, or video games. There's an expectation of immediate reward. But dopamine isn't just about mindless entertainment. It can be used as a tool for motivation. If you start associating progress with pleasure, your brain will begin craving effort. Instead of working against you, it will push you forward. Small wins create this effect. Every time you make progress, celebrate it. Acknowledge even the smallest achievements. When your brain starts to connect effort with a sense of reward, hard work stops feeling like something to avoid. Another way to rewire your perception of effort is by shifting your identity. If you see yourself as someone who dislikes hard work, you'll avoid it. If you define yourself as someone who thrives in difficult situations, you'll embrace it. The way you talk to yourself matters. If you constantly tell yourself that work is miserable, that you're lazy, or that you're bad at staying focused, those thoughts become your reality. But if you start believing that you're someone who enjoys the challenge, someone who takes pride in effort, your brain will follow. People act in alignment with their identity. When you shift from thinking, "I have to do this," to "this is who I am," everything changes. The struggle with hard work often comes from focusing too much on the end result. When you only care about the finish line, every step feels like an obstacle. But if you can shift your focus to the present moment, the work itself becomes more engaging. Athletes don't only train for the competition, they learn to love the training itself. Writers don't just aim for a finished book, they fall in love with the process of writing. If you can train yourself to find satisfaction in the effort, you'll no longer need motivation to keep going. The process itself will become the reward. There's also power in making things a game. The brain loves challenges, puzzles, and competition. If a task feels like a dull chore, your mind will resist it. But if you can turn it into a personal challenge, it becomes something engaging. Gamifying your progress can make even the most tedious work feel exciting. Set small milestones, track your progress, and create personal challenges. Instead of seeing hard work as a burden, make it something you're eager to conquer. Energy plays a huge role in how you perceive effort. If you're constantly exhausted, everything will feel harder than it actually is. The brain is part of the body, and when the body is drained, motivation disappears. Sleep, nutrition, movement,
These aren't just side factors, they directly impact your ability to push through discomfort. When you take care of your body, hard work stops feeling so overwhelming. Your environment also shapes how you feel about effort. If you're surrounded by distractions, negativity, or a space that drains your energy, work will always feel like a struggle. If you create an environment that inspires focus and creativity, effort becomes easier. The people around you matter as well. If you spend time with those who complain about work, you'll start seeing it as a burden too. But if you surround yourself with people who embrace challenges, that mindset will rub off on you. The key to long-term success isn't about forcing yourself to work harder through sheer willpower. It's about making hard work feel rewarding. If you can find a way to enjoy the process, you won't need tricks to stay motivated. You'll naturally want to keep going. Progress itself becomes addictive. The more you associate effort with a sense of satisfaction, the easier it becomes to show up every day. At the end of the day, hard work is unavoidable. The question isn't whether you'll face challenges, it's how you'll approach them. If you see effort as suffering, every step will feel like a battle. But if you can train your brain to enjoy the challenge, you'll develop a mindset that makes success inevitable. It's not about forcing yourself to work, it's about changing the way you see the work itself. When you do that, discipline stops feeling like a chore and starts feeling like freedom.
Chapter 5. The Identity Shift, Becoming an Action Taker. Who you believe you are determines what you do. Every action, habit, and decision you make is shaped by the identity you hold. People who see themselves as procrastinators will always find ways to delay. Those who believe they lack discipline will struggle to stay consistent. The way you define yourself becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you want to take action effortlessly, you have to shift your identity. You must see yourself as the kind of person who does the work without hesitation. When you make this shift, productivity stops feeling like something you force yourself to do. It becomes natural. Most people try to change by focusing on actions alone. They set goals, create schedules, and try to force new habits. But if deep down they still see themselves as someone who struggles with motivation, their efforts won't last. Behavior follows identity. When your actions align with the person you believe you are, they feel effortless. If there's a conflict between your identity and your habits, you'll always struggle to stay consistent. A person who sees themselves as a runner doesn't have to convince themselves to go for a jog. It's simply what they do. A writer who believes in their craft doesn't sit around waiting for inspiration. They write because that's who they are. The easiest way to create lasting change is not by forcing yourself to act differently, but by becoming someone for whom those actions are second nature. Your brain constantly looks for proof to reinforce your identity. If you believe you're bad at staying focused, you'll unconsciously notice every time you get distracted. If you see yourself as lazy, you'll find evidence of your laziness. But this process also works in your favor. When you start to act like the person you want to become, your brain collects evidence that reinforces that new identity. Every time you complete a task on time, you prove to yourself that you're someone who takes action. Each time you push past resistance, you build the belief that you're someone who follows through. Change doesn't happen in an instant. It happens through small moments that add up over time. One of the most powerful ways to shift your identity is by focusing on the process rather than the outcome. Many people tell themselves they'll believe in their new identity once they achieve a big result. They think they'll feel like a disciplined person once they've worked hard for months. But the truth is, identity shifts happen in the small, everyday choices. You don't need to achieve something huge to become an action taker. You become one by taking action, even in the smallest ways. Each decision reinforces who you are. If you write one page today, you are a writer. If you show up for a workout, you are an athlete. If you complete one task without procrastinating, you are productive. The transformation happens in these small moments, not just in the final achievement. Your words shape your reality. If you constantly say, "I'm bad at staying focused," or "I always procrastinate," your brain accepts these as facts. But if you start telling yourself a different story, your actions will follow. Saying, "I'm becoming the kind of person who takes action immediately," shifts your mindset. It reminds your brain to look for proof that supports this new belief. Every time you follow through on a task, no matter how small, you strengthen that identity. The more you reinforce this narrative, the more automatic your actions become. Your environment also plays a crucial role in shaping your identity. The people you surround yourself with influence the way you see yourself. If you spend time with those who complain about work and avoid responsibility, you'll absorb that mindset. But if you surround yourself with people who take action and hold themselves accountable, that behavior will start to feel normal. Your physical space matters too. If your environment is cluttered and full of distractions, your brain associates it with inaction. But if you create a space that encourages focus and productivity, your identity begins to shift. Small changes in your surroundings can reinforce the person you want to become. Momentum is the key to solidifying a new identity. When you take even one small action, it builds energy that makes the next step easier. Many people believe they need motivation to get started, but motivation actually comes from movement. Once you begin, your brain naturally wants to continue. This is why the first step is always the hardest, but once you take it, everything flows more easily. Every time you act in alignment with your new identity, you make it stronger. Over time, the habits you once had to force become automatic. People who always get things done aren't necessarily more disciplined or more talented. They've simply built an identity around being the type of person who follows through. They don't waste time debating whether to start. They don't negotiate with themselves about whether they feel like it. They act because that's who they are. This is the real difference between those who succeed and those who struggle. It's not just about effort, it's about the way they see themselves. The shift happens the moment you stop identifying with your old patterns. The moment you stop saying, "I'm a procrastinator," and start saying, "I'm someone who takes action," everything begins to change. The more you prove this new identity to yourself through small actions, the more natural it becomes. Eventually, you don't have to think about it, it just happens. The resistance fades, and what once felt difficult becomes a normal part of who you are. The secret to lasting change isn't about trying harder, it's about seeing yourself differently. When you become the kind of person who does the work without hesitation, productivity stops being a struggle. It becomes automatic, effortless, and inevitable. Chapter 6. How to keep going every day. You wake up with the best intentions. Maybe you've got a list of things to do, a plan in place, and the hope that today will be the day you make real progress. But somewhere between the morning and the afternoon, your enthusiasm starts to fade. You get distracted by something small, checking your phone, scrolling through emails, or just zoning out. Before you know it, hours have passed, and your to-do list still looks exactly the same. It feels like something's missing. You know you should keep going, but the motivation just isn't there. The truth is, staying consistent isn't always about motivation. Motivation is fleeting. It's an emotion, and emotions can shift from moment to moment.
1 minute, you feel fired up. The next, you're questioning whether the effort is worth it. So what do you do when motivation is absent, but you still want to get things done? The answer lies in making consistency a habit, not an option. Consistency isn't about pushing yourself to work harder every single day. It's about creating a structure where action becomes the default. There's a powerful shift that happens when you stop relying on motivation to get things done. You don't wait until you feel inspired to act. You take action, whether or not you feel like it. The key to staying consistent is building routines that don't rely on fleeting feelings, but on systems that guide you toward progress. It starts by understanding that consistency isn't about perfection. It's about showing up, day in and day out, even when the conditions aren't ideal. The goal isn't to have a flawless streak. It's to develop the habit of moving forward, even when things feel difficult. You don't need a perfect day to keep going. You just need to make sure you don't let a bad moment or a setback derail you completely. The most successful people aren't necessarily those who work the hardest or smartest. They're the ones who show up, no matter what. The power of small wins is often underestimated. People tend to think they need to achieve huge breakthroughs to see progress, but real momentum comes from incremental victories. Every small step, every single task completed, contributes to your overall goal. By focusing on these small wins, you reinforce the habit of consistent action. You build a rhythm that becomes easier to follow. And as you see yourself making progress, even in the tiniest ways, you begin to reinforce the belief that you are capable of consistency. One of the biggest barriers to consistency is all or nothing thinking. We get caught up in the idea that if we don't have a perfect day or follow through perfectly, we've failed. This mentality can be paralyzing. If you skip one workout or forget one task, it feels like everything is ruined. But what if instead of looking at a mistake as a failure, you viewed it as part of the process? Every step back doesn't mean you've fallen behind. It's just one moment in the larger journey. Consistency doesn't require you to be perfect. It requires you to be persistent. The difference is subtle but important. Perfectionism causes stress, burnout and anxiety because it sets you up for constant disappointment. Persistence, on the other hand, is about weathering the storms and continuing even when things aren't perfect. You keep showing up. You keep doing the work. And each day, no matter how small, adds up. Building habits that encourage consistency starts with simplicity. You don't need a complicated system or elaborate plan. You need to make the actions so easy to complete that they become automatic. This might mean breaking down your tasks into smaller, manageable pieces. Instead of setting out to write a book in one go, write for just 10 minutes every morning. Instead of aiming to exercise for an hour, start with a 5-minute walk. Over time, these small actions add up and eventually become part of your daily routine. Another key to consistency is setting yourself up for success in the simplest way possible. It's easy to let distractions get in the way, so the trick is to remove as many of them as possible before you start. If you want to write, turn off your phone notifications. If you're trying to be more productive at work, clear your desk of anything unnecessary. Your environment influences your behavior. The less you have to fight against, the easier it is to stay consistent. Sometimes we fail to stay consistent because we're not fully connected to why we're doing something in the first place. Without a clear reason, it's easy to drop off when the going gets tough. Reconnect to your purpose. Why is this task important to you? What's the bigger goal behind it? When you understand the deeper why, it becomes easier to make the everyday effort feel worthwhile. When you see the bigger picture, The small steps add up to something meaningful. The hardest part is often getting started. Once you begin, the momentum builds, and it becomes easier to continue. The idea of tackling a huge project can feel overwhelming, but breaking it down into smaller tasks makes it more manageable. Even if you only do a little each day, it adds up. Progress is progress, no matter how slow. Every action, no matter how small, is a step forward. Consistency thrives on routine. When you create a structure for your day, it becomes easier to fall into a rhythm of action. This isn't about creating a rigid schedule or becoming obsessed with following a timeline. It's about creating a rhythm that works for you, so your actions flow naturally. This could mean working on your most important task first thing in the morning, setting aside a block of time for deep work, or even having a designated place to work that helps you stay focused. The power of consistency comes from the fact that it compounds over time. It's not about making huge leaps all at once. It's about showing up every day, doing the work, and improving a little bit at a time. The compound effect of daily effort is what leads to big results. It's easy to overlook the small, but when they add up over weeks, months, or even years, the difference is staggering. You can't see it immediately, but with each step, you're getting closer to your goal. Staying consistent isn't always easy. There will be days when motivation is low, when distractions are high, or when life gets in the way. But the key is remembering that consistency isn't about having a perfect day. It's about showing up every day, even when things are difficult. It's about making small daily efforts that add up over time. Keep going, no matter what, even when you feel like you've fallen off track. Remember, consistency isn't about perfection. It's about persistence, and persistence always wins in the end.
Chapter 7. The Power of Deadlines. Why time limits force action. Time seems to move in mysterious ways. Some days it feels like there's never enough of it, and other days it slips by unnoticed. But when you look back, you realize that time doesn't just pass. It's something we must work with intentionally if we want to make the most of it. This is where deadlines come in. They might seem like just a way to manage time, but there's so much more. Deadlines are a tool that can push you to act, cut through distractions, and force you to focus. They transform vague intentions into concrete actions. We've all experienced the power of a deadline, whether it's a work project, a personal goal, or a task we've put off for too long. You can procrastinate for weeks, but the moment a deadline looms, something inside you shifts. That pressure forces you to take action. What's happening here isn't some magical burst of motivation. It's the sense of urgency, the recognition that time is finite, and there are consequences to not acting. This pressure is what makes deadlines so powerful. They force you to make decisions, prioritize what's important, and move forward, even if it's uncomfortable. The reason deadlines work so well is because they put a boundary on time. Without that boundary, it's easy to procrastinate. You can always tell yourself you'll do something tomorrow, or next week, or after the weekend. But when there's a firm deadline, it cuts through that illusion of endless time. It turns your task into something that can't be ignored any longer. That pressure you feel, though uncomfortable, is actually what propels you into action. It creates a sense of necessity. But what happens when there is no deadline? What if you're working on something without a clear end point? It's easy to fall into the trap of doing nothing at all. Without the urgency of a deadline, it's tempting to put things off, telling yourself you'll get around to it later. But later never seems to come. This is where you have to create your own deadlines, even when no one else is holding you accountable. You might not have a boss breathing down your neck, but you can still set deadlines for yourself that create a sense of urgency. Creating your own deadlines doesn't mean adding more pressure or stress. It's about setting realistic, meaningful time frames for yourself. When you give yourself a deadline, even a self-imposed one, you're making a commitment. And when you make that commitment, you raise your standards. You're saying, this matters enough that I'm going to get it done within a set time frame. This simple shift in mindset can drastically improve your ability to get things done. The key to making deadlines work for you is understanding how to break down big projects into smaller, manageable tasks. A large project without a deadline can feel overwhelming. You look at the big picture and it feels like there's no way to finish. But when you break it down into smaller, time-bound chunks, it becomes far less intimidating. Instead of thinking about the whole project, focus on one task at a time. Each of those tasks can have its own mini deadline. This gives you both direction and motivation. It's much easier to stay focused when you know exactly what needs to be done and by when. Another trick is to treat your deadlines as if they're set in stone. Even if no one else is holding you accountable, pretend that there's someone waiting on you, that there's a team or client expecting results. You'll find that you take the deadline more seriously when you attach that external sense of responsibility. The pressure of knowing that someone else is relying on you, even if it's just an imaginary person, creates the kind of urgency that gets you moving. One of the most powerful ways to leverage deadlines is to use them as an opportunity for growth. Deadlines aren't just about finishing tasks, they're about challenging yourself to perform at your best. A deadline forces you to make decisions, prioritize what matters, and eliminate distractions. It teaches you how to work under pressure and still produce results. And while that may feel uncomfortable at times, it's in those moments of discomfort that growth happens. The sense of urgency that deadlines create also taps into another powerful force: your natural ability to focus. When there's a clear end point, your brain knows exactly where to direct its energy. It's not wandering, unsure of where to begin. It has a target, and that target fuels concentration. The more specific and time-sensitive your deadlines are, the more focused you become. You're not multitasking or spreading yourself thin. You're working on one thing at a time, knowing that it needs to be done by a certain point. This level of focus is hard to achieve without deadlines, but when you create them, you give yourself the structure needed to achieve it. Deadlines also help you overcome perfectionism. When you're working toward an open-ended goal, it's easy to get stuck in a loop of overthinking, refining, and second-guessing yourself. You want everything to be perfect before you submit or share your work. But perfectionism can paralyze you. Deadlines force you to move forward. They encourage you to finish, even if the task isn't perfect, because the deadline is non-negotiable. You learn to let go of the idea that everything needs to be flawless, and instead focus on making progress. One of the most important lessons about deadlines is that they don't just work when you're racing toward the finish line. They also help you manage your time and energy over the long term. By breaking larger goals into smaller time-bound steps, you're pacing yourself. You're not waiting until the last minute to get everything done. Instead, you're setting up a series of smaller deadlines that allow you to work steadily without the stress of cramming everything into one final push. It's a more sustainable way of achieving your goals, and it's a technique that can be applied to any project, no matter how big or small. Even when deadlines seem impossible or overwhelming, there's a way to work with them. If you're faced with a daunting deadline, break it down even further. Ask yourself, what's the smallest thing I can do right now that moves me closer to this deadline? Maybe it's a 5-minute task. Maybe it's an email to get the ball rolling. Whatever it is, taking that first small step makes the deadline feel less intimidating.
Each small action adds momentum, and before you know it, you've made significant progress toward your goal. The beauty of deadlines lies in their simplicity. They give you direction, they force you to take action, and they teach you how to prioritize. But they're not just about getting things done, they're about making the process more effective, less stressful, and more rewarding. The next time you find yourself struggling to stay on track, remember that the simple act of setting a deadline is often all it takes to break the cycle of procrastination and move toward meaningful results. Chapter 8. The No Plan B Trick. When you commit to a goal, there's often a part of you that wants to keep your options open. You think to yourself, if this doesn't work out, I'll just try something else. It feels safe to keep a plan B in the back pocket, just in case plan A doesn't go as expected. But the truth is, holding on to that safety net might be the very thing preventing you from achieving success in the first place. It's easy to believe that having a fallback option is the smart thing to do, but in reality, it weakens your resolve and your commitment to the task at hand. When you leave yourself an escape route, you're subconsciously telling your brain that failure is an option. You're hedging your bets, not fully committing to the process. That backup plan is like an invisible safety net that cushions the blow when things get tough. And while it might sound reassuring, it's also what keeps you from pushing yourself beyond your limits. The more you entertain the idea of a plan B, the less likely you are to give plan A everything you've got. The people who succeed in life are the ones who have burned their bridges to the escape route. They don't have a fallback option because they understand that commitment is the key to success. When you remove the possibility of failure from your mind, you stop hesitating and start taking action. Without a plan B, the only way forward is through your current plan. It's a powerful shift that forces you to find solutions, adapt and move forward no matter what. It's not about being reckless or abandoning all logic. It's about being fully immersed in the process. When you're truly committed to a goal, you stop thinking about what happens if it doesn't work. Instead, you focus entirely on the present moment, the task at hand, and the steps that need to be taken right now to make it happen. You become more resourceful, more determined, and more creative when you no longer have the option to walk away. A big part of this commitment comes from trusting yourself and your abilities. If you have a plan B, you're essentially saying, I don't trust myself enough to make plan A work, so I'll keep a backup. But when you let go of that safety net, you begin to develop real trust in your ability to handle whatever comes your way. It's this trust that drives you forward. The idea of eliminating plan B also applies to how you approach your daily habits. Often, we have a backup plan for our routines, something like, if I don't get to my workout today, I'll just do it tomorrow. But we know that tomorrow rarely comes, especially if you've already given yourself an excuse. What if, instead of a backup, you simply committed to showing up today, regardless of the circumstances? If you truly commit to something, you stop looking for alternatives. You don't give yourself permission to make excuses. And when things don't go perfectly, you don't throw in the towel or retreat to plan B. You adjust, adapt, and keep moving forward. The key is to stay locked in on the goal and eliminate the option of quitting altogether. When you create a plan and stick with it, you'll be amazed at how many challenges you can overcome. Often, the biggest obstacles aren't the ones we can't overcome, they're the ones we never even attempt because we haven't committed fully. By keeping a fallback plan in place, we prevent ourselves from seeing what's possible when we go all in. Think about the people who achieve remarkable things. They don't have a plan B. They don't sit around thinking, what if this doesn't work out? Instead, they trust the process and give their best effort, even when things don't go as planned. They're able to adjust, find new solutions, and keep going, By removing the safety net, they create a sense of urgency, and that urgency is often the catalyst that pushes them through obstacles. It's also important to recognize that you don't have to have everything figured out from the beginning. You don't need to know every single detail of how you're going to achieve your goal before you start. The key is commitment. The more committed you are to your goal, the more clarity you'll gain as you move forward. You don't need a fallback plan, because the act of showing up and putting in the work will help you find the answers along the way. What this really comes down to is a decision. You can decide to stay committed and let go of the idea of plan B. This decision isn't about being impulsive or acting recklessly. It's about being clear in your focus. You commit to the path, and then you take each step with purpose. When you give up the option of failure, you remove the hesitation that keeps you stuck. At first, letting go of a plan B might feel scary. After all, it's natural to want to have an escape route, something that can save you if things don't go the way you expect. But as you begin to trust yourself in the process, you'll realize that the absence of plan B doesn't make you weak or unprepared. It makes you stronger. It forces you to rise to the occasion, tap into your inner resources, and find creative solutions when faced with challenges. The more you commit to your goals without distractions or doubts, the more you'll start to see real progress. You won't waste time considering what happens if you fail. Instead, you'll focus entirely on what you can do right now to make success happen. In the end, your progress isn't determined by the things you keep in your back pocket. It's determined by your ability to keep moving forward regardless of what may come. Letting go of plan B is a game changer. It's about committing to yourself and your dreams in a way that forces you to act. Without a backup, you have no choice but to make it work. And when you have no choice, you'll find that you're capable of more than you ever imagined.
Chapter 9. How to remove distractions in 30 seconds. The world is full of distractions, and in many ways, they're designed to pull us away from our tasks. Whether it's your phone buzzing with notifications or the endless stream of online content begging for your attention, distractions are everywhere. The more you allow these distractions to interrupt your day, the harder it becomes to get anything done. It's almost like they're competing for your focus, and unfortunately, they're winning far too often. In order to make real progress in any area of your life, you have to learn to manage these distractions effectively. It's not enough to simply say, "I'll try harder next time," or "I'll push through the temptation." You have to take action, and that action has to be swift and immediate. The key is to remove distractions quickly, as soon as they arise, and do so in a way that doesn't disrupt your flow. One of the best ways to remove distractions is to recognize them before they fully take hold. Often the first sign that you're being distracted is a momentary loss of focus, an urge to check your phone, or a sudden thought that takes you off track. When that moment happens, you can't afford to let it slip by. The longer you wait to act, the more likely it is that you'll get sucked into that distraction for longer than you'd like. So how do you do it? How do you remove distractions without feeling like you're constantly fighting yourself? The key is to act quickly. The moment you feel yourself being pulled away from what you're working on, make an immediate decision to stop the distraction in its tracks. It can be as simple as turning off your phone's notifications, closing unnecessary browser tabs, or even physically removing yourself from the situation if you're in a place where distractions are unavoidable. But it's not just about the physical distractions. Your mind is another source of distractions, and it can be just as powerful as the outside world. Sometimes, your own thoughts and worries will try to pull you away from your task, convincing you that something else is more important. But if you can train yourself to notice these thoughts and recognize them for what they are, distractions, you can prevent them from taking over. It's about being mindful of where your attention is going and making the conscious decision to bring it back to what matters. An important part of this process is realizing that distractions are inevitable. No matter how hard you try, you can't completely eliminate them from your life, but you can control how you respond to them. The more quickly you acknowledge a distraction and remove it, the less time it will take away from your work. This is where the 30-second rule comes into play. Whenever a distraction arises, you have exactly 30 seconds to act. If you let that moment pass, you're more likely to get caught up in the distraction and lose focus for a longer period of time. By acting quickly, whether that means turning off your phone, closing a distracting app, or simply refocusing your mind, you're able to keep your momentum going and stay on track. It's not always easy to get rid of distractions, especially when they feel so pressing. We're conditioned to respond to notifications and messages right away, and it can be difficult to break that habit. But remember that every time you let a distraction take hold, you're giving away your power. You're allowing something outside of you to control your time, energy, and focus. And the longer you allow this to happen, the more difficult it becomes to break free. To be successful, you have to treat your time like the precious resource it is. Every second that you spend on something that doesn't move you closer to your goal is a second you'll never get back. And when you start to value your time more than you value the distractions, you'll naturally find it easier to avoid them. But that doesn't mean it will always be simple. It will take effort and intentionality on your part. One of the best ways to remove distractions is to set up an environment that supports your focus. This means getting rid of anything that might pull your attention away from what you're working on. If you're working from home, it could mean creating a designated workspace that's free from clutter or distractions. If you're in a public place, it might mean putting on noise-canceling headphones or sitting in a quiet corner where you're less likely to be interrupted. In addition to your physical environment, think about how you can set up your digital environment for success. Turn off notifications on your phone, put it in another room, or use apps that block distracting websites while you're working. The fewer external distractions you allow into your life, the easier it will be to stay focused on the task at hand. Another trick to removing distractions is to break your work into smaller, more manageable chunks. When you're faced with a large task, it's easy to become overwhelmed, and that can lead to a loss of focus. But if you break the task down into smaller, more achievable steps, you'll feel more in control, and you'll be less likely to get distracted. Focus on one thing at a time, and make sure you're giving it your full attention. You can also use timed intervals to boost your focus. The Pomodoro technique, for example, involves working in short bursts of focused effort, typically 25 minutes, followed by a short break. During the 25 minutes, you commit to working without any distractions, and when the timer goes off, you take a break. This system helps you avoid burnout and ensures that your attention stays sharp during your work sessions. The key takeaway here is that you don't have to let distractions control your day. By taking proactive steps to minimize them and responding quickly when they arise, you can reclaim your focus and stay on track. Distractions will always be part of life, but you have the power to decide how much impact they'll have on your progress. By training yourself to act quickly and remove distractions in 30 seconds or less, you'll be able to get more done and stay on course toward your goals. And with time and practice, you'll find that focusing becomes easier and more natural, allowing you to accomplish more than you ever thought possible. Chapter 10. The One-Touch Rule. Stop wasting time on small tasks. You've probably heard it before, don't sweat the small stuff. It's one of those sayings that's often repeated, but rarely taken to heart. The thing is,
The small stuff can actually be a huge problem when it comes to managing your time and focus. We all have a million tiny tasks that seem trivial on the surface. Answer an email, file a document, make a quick phone call, but the reality is, these small tasks have a sneaky way of draining our attention and energy. They may seem insignificant, but together, they pile up and consume more time than you'd think. If you've ever found yourself jumping from one tiny task to another, checking your email, answering texts, doing quick household chores, you know what I mean. It feels like you're doing something productive, but in reality, you're just spinning your wheels, never really moving forward. This constant switching between tasks can also leave you feeling mentally exhausted, even though you haven't accomplished anything substantial. One of the best ways to tackle this problem is by implementing the one-touch rule. It's simple, but incredibly effective. The idea is that once you touch a task, you either complete it or set it aside for later. There's no room for procrastination or second-guessing. The moment you start on something, you either finish it immediately or delegate it. And by immediately, I mean within a short window of time. Think no more than a few minutes. How many times have you found yourself putting something off because it seemed like a minor task that you'd deal with later? The problem with this approach is that later rarely comes. The small tasks pile up, and soon you're faced with a mountain of things to do, most of which could have been handled in the time it takes to make a cup of coffee. The one-touch rule flips this on its head. You make the decision to deal with something right away, even if it's only for a couple of minutes. Here's how it works in practice. Let's say you open your email inbox and see a message from a colleague asking you to look over a document. If you're like most people, your initial instinct might be to read the email, make a mental note to check the document later, and then move on to something else. But with the one-touch rule, you don't allow yourself to get away with this. The moment you read the email, you take action. If it's something you can do in less than 2 minutes, replying with a quick answer, reviewing a document, or handling the task at hand, you do it then and there. The beauty of this approach is that it eliminates the build-up of small nagging tasks that constantly distract you. Instead of allowing your inbox to become a constant source of stress, you treat each email as an opportunity to either deal with it immediately or put it in its proper place. You'll find that this reduces mental clutter, which frees up your focus for more important tasks. But the one-touch rule isn't limited to email. It applies to all the small tasks that tend to clutter up your day. Every time you find yourself doing something that only takes a few minutes, whether it's responding to a text message, handling a minor request from a friend, or tidying up a small area, ask yourself if you can do it right now. The answer is almost always yes. Instead of putting it off or adding it to your to-do list, you take care of it and move on. One of the common excuses people give for not applying the one-touch rule is that they don't want to interrupt their flow. They're working on something important and don't want to be distracted by these small tasks. While it's true that deep work requires uninterrupted focus, the key is knowing when to take care of these smaller tasks without letting them derail your productivity. You can still manage small tasks efficiently without breaking your concentration. The one-touch rule is about building the discipline to handle things immediately without allowing them to build up and distract you later. By doing this, you prevent a minor task from becoming a major distraction that derails your focus later in the day. Let's say you're in the middle of a big project, deeply focused on the task at hand. You get a text or a quick notification on your phone. Now, if you follow the one-touch rule, you know that you have two choices: either deal with it quickly or ignore it until your work session is over. If you decide to deal with it, you don't let yourself fall into the trap of checking your phone endlessly or letting the distraction derail you. You respond, move on, and get back to your original task without any lingering interruptions. Another key aspect of the one-touch rule is recognizing when something doesn't need your attention at all. We tend to have a knee-jerk reaction to every little thing that crosses our path, whether it's an email, a message, or a small chore. We feel like we need to handle everything right away, but the truth is, not everything is urgent. Sometimes the best thing you can do is ignore a task until it becomes truly important. The one-touch rule helps you identify these moments where letting go of something until later is the best course of action. The one-touch rule is particularly useful when it comes to decluttering your mind. When you leave things unfinished or allow them to pile up, it creates mental clutter that inhibits your focus and energy. By using this rule, you make sure everything gets dealt with immediately and decisively, which helps you maintain a sense of control over your day. And this sense of control is essential if you want to stay motivated and productive. As you start applying this rule in your daily life, you'll notice a few things. First, you'll be amazed at how much time you waste on tasks that could have been handled quickly. Second, you'll find that you have more mental space to focus on the important tasks that actually require your time and energy. You'll start to feel lighter, more focused, and more in control of your day. You may also find that the one-touch rule helps you build momentum. When you take care of small tasks immediately, you get a sense of accomplishment. This sense of progress propels you forward, helping you tackle bigger and more complex tasks. Over time, this practice can help you build a habit of efficiency where you no longer procrastinate on small tasks or allow them to pile up. By following the one-touch rule, you're not just getting things done faster, you're also changing the way you approach your day. You stop putting things off, you stop procrastinating, and you start taking control of your time, your focus, and your productivity. The small tasks no longer control you because you've made the decision to handle them immediately and efficiently. And in doing so, you free up your mental space to focus on what really matters. The power of the one-touch rule lies in its simplicity. It's a small change in how you approach tasks, but it can have a profound impact on your productivity and mental clarity. By training yourself to deal with tasks immediately, you'll be able to handle your day with more ease and confidence, leaving behind the stress and clutter of unfinished tasks.
Chapter 11. The Willpower Myth. Why you don't need more discipline. We live in a world that constantly demands more of our time and energy. The more you try to push yourself, the more you're told that it's about willpower. The myth goes something like this: if you had more discipline, you'd be able to conquer your procrastination and get everything done. But here's the reality: willpower is not something you can rely on for long-term success. The idea that you just need more self-control or more discipline to get through your tasks is misleading, and it's actually one of the most dangerous misconceptions about productivity. We've all experienced those moments where we muster all our willpower to tackle something we've been putting off. Maybe it's a big project, an important conversation, or something else that requires a lot of focus. At first, we're determined. We push through the discomfort and force ourselves to stay on task. But then, after a while, we hit a wall. We get tired, we get distracted, our motivation wanes, and what happens next? We procrastinate again. So, we double down, thinking that we just need more discipline and self-control, but this only leads to burnout and frustration. What's really going on here? The truth is that willpower is a limited resource. You can only rely on it for so long before it runs out. It's like trying to drive a car without refueling. You may be able to go a little while, but eventually you'll hit empty. That's why the key to overcoming procrastination isn't about trying to force yourself through it with sheer willpower. It's about creating systems and habits that work for you, ones that don't require you to depend on self-discipline all the time. Think about it. How often have you found yourself putting something off, even though you know it's important? It's because motivation is not something you can summon on demand. It's not something you can just turn on by sheer force of will. Motivation comes and goes, and when it's gone, willpower is all you have left to get you through. But that's not a sustainable way to get things done. So, what can you do instead? The first step is understanding that willpower isn't the solution to procrastination. The second step is recognizing that we don't need more discipline to get things done. We need smarter strategies. Think of it like this. Instead of trying to push your way through tasks with sheer willpower, create an environment and system that makes it easier to succeed. Make the actions you need to take part of your routine, and the motivation will come naturally. Take a look at your daily habits. Are they designed in a way that makes it easy for you to take action, or are they set up in a way that requires constant mental effort? The goal is to make productivity automatic. You don't want to have to constantly decide whether or not you'll work on something. You want it to be a natural part of your day, something that doesn't require you to fight yourself every time you need to do it. The more you rely on willpower, the more exhausted you'll become. But when you build systems and habits that support you, you'll find that action becomes almost effortless. You can start small by breaking down bigger tasks into smaller, more manageable pieces. If you look at a massive project and think, I have no idea where to start, that's where procrastination kicks in. It feels overwhelming, and so you put it off. But if you break it down into smaller steps, suddenly it becomes much more manageable. You no longer need to rely on willpower to make progress. You've made it so easy to get started that there's no room for procrastination to sneak in. Another way to reduce your reliance on willpower is by developing routines. When your actions are habitual, they don't require any decision-making. Think about the things you do automatically, without having to think twice: brushing your teeth, making your bed, eating lunch. These are all habits, and they don't require much willpower to perform. Now imagine if you had the same kind of automatic habits for your work or personal projects. Instead of waiting for motivation to strike, you simply follow your routine, knowing that you're moving closer to your goals. Creating a routine also helps you avoid decision fatigue. When you're constantly having to make decisions about when to work, what to focus on, or how to approach a task, it drains your mental energy. But if you schedule your work in advance and make certain tasks part of your daily or weekly routine, you eliminate the need for decisions. You just do what's next, and the action follows naturally. One more thing to keep in mind is that willpower works better when it's not drained by unnecessary distractions. The more you can reduce distractions in your environment, the easier it will be to stay focused and take action. It's much harder to concentrate on a task if you're constantly checking your phone, responding to messages, or dealing with interruptions. By creating an environment that minimizes distractions, you allow yourself to focus on the task at hand without needing to use all your willpower just to stay on track. This doesn't mean that willpower has no role in our productivity. It's just that willpower is not something you can rely on alone. It's a limited resource, and using it wisely is key. Willpower is effective when it's used for short bursts of energy, like when you're in the middle of a deep focus session, or when you need to push through a particularly tough moment. But over the long haul, you can't rely on it to carry you through every task. Instead, you need a strategy that makes action automatic and effortless, so you're not draining yourself on a daily basis. Think of it this way: willpower is like a battery. At the beginning of the day, your battery is fully charged. But as you make decisions, push through difficult tasks, and resist distractions, your battery drains. The more willpower you use, the more you have to recharge. That's why it's so important to build habits and routines that reduce the amount of willpower you need. You want to reserve your energy for the moments that really require it. When you start to shift your focus away from willpower and towards creating effective systems, you'll notice a change in how you approach your day. Instead of struggling with self-doubt and fighting against your own impulses, you'll feel more in control. You'll stop feeling like you're constantly battling procrastination and instead start to feel like you're making consistent, meaningful progress. That's the power of habits and routines. When you make them work for you, procrastination no longer has a chance. And remember, the key here is not perfection. You won't always stick to your habits perfectly, and that's okay. What matters is that you're creating a framework that supports you in getting things done, even when motivation and willpower aren't at their peak. This approach will serve you far better in the long run than simply trying to force your way through every task with more self-discipline. Chapter 12. The Never Miss Twice Rule. Procrastination is an easy habit to fall into, and once you're in it, it's hard to break free. You might feel like you're constantly slipping into the same old cycle. You begin with good intentions, but then something derails you. A moment of hesitation turns into a day, a week, or even longer. But the good news is, it's possible to change that cycle. You just need to remember one simple rule: never miss twice. This rule is deceptively simple, yet incredibly powerful. It works because it cuts through the complexity of behavior change. It's easy to let one mistake turn into two, and then two turns into a habit, and before you know it, you're right back where you started. The idea behind never miss twice is that if you slip up once, that's okay. It happens. But the key is not to let it slide into a pattern. You're allowed to miss a day, but don't let that turn into two. Once you miss twice, you've given yourself permission to fall into the habit of missing more often, and the momentum you've built starts to break down. The first step is recognizing that you're human, and humans slip up. It's part of the process. If you're trying to form a new habit or change an old one, you'll have moments where you falter. That's not a failure. That's part of the journey. The real test is what happens after you slip up. Do you use that as an excuse to quit entirely, or do you get back on track as soon as you can? The never miss twice rule means that when you slip up, you don't let it define your progress. You don't let it become an excuse to give up altogether. Instead, you focus on getting back to your routine the very next time you're able. Think of it like falling off a bike. The first time you fall, you may feel embarrassed or frustrated, but you don't stop trying to ride. You get back up, and you try again. If you were to let that first fall stop you, you'd never learn how to ride. Life is much the same. Missing a day, or failing once doesn't define you, but how you respond does. When you get back up quickly, you maintain your momentum, and you keep moving forward. This concept is essential in the fight against procrastination, because the moment you let yourself miss more than once, you've given procrastination a foothold. When you're trying to build momentum or stay consistent, the smallest slip-up can feel like the end of the world. It's easy to let a missed task or a day of procrastination snowball into something bigger. But the secret is in the recovery. The faster you can recover, the less power procrastination has over you. When you train yourself to bounce back immediately, you break the cycle before it has a chance to build any real momentum. Another powerful aspect of never miss twice is how it helps prevent all or nothing thinking. This is a trap that many people fall into. They think that if they can't do something perfectly, they shouldn't do it at all. One missed day,
becomes a justification to quit entirely, and the progress you've made feels like it's been wiped out. But in reality, perfection isn't the goal, progress is. The never miss twice rule helps you maintain your progress, even on the days when things don't go perfectly. You allow yourself room for mistakes, but you don't let those mistakes derail your overall goal. This rule also works wonders for long-term consistency. One of the reasons we procrastinate is that we see a big task and we feel overwhelmed. We think, this is too much, I'll never be able to do it all. But when you follow the never miss twice rule, you take the pressure off. You don't have to do everything in one go. You just need to show up consistently. If you can't do everything today, that's fine. Just don't skip 2 days in a row. When you stop expecting perfection and accept that you'll miss a day or get off track sometimes, you can start focusing on the bigger picture. The days when you're off track don't matter as long as you get back in the game the next day. What matters is showing up more often than not. If you make the rule to never miss twice, you're setting yourself up for success in the long term. The consistency you build over time will become the new habit, and it will be much easier to stay on track. Building this kind of consistency requires a mindset shift. It's not about avoiding failure or perfection. It's about embracing progress. It's about giving yourself permission to stumble, knowing that it doesn't define you. The key is to recognize that missing one day doesn't have to lead to missing more. It's a small but significant distinction that makes all the difference. Take a moment to think about the times in your life when you've let one mistake become 2, then 3, and so on. Maybe you've done it with a workout routine, or a project at work, or even with personal habits. It starts small, a missed day here and there, but eventually it turns into a pattern. This is the power of momentum, but it works both ways. Just as negative momentum can take you off track, positive momentum can get you back on track. The trick is in your response. When you miss, get right back to it. The faster you do that, the more your brain starts to associate consistency with ease, and the less procrastination will hold power over you. You can think of your mind like a train. Once it's moving, it's hard to stop. It takes effort to get it started, but once you build up momentum, it keeps moving with less energy. The same thing happens with good habits. The more you show up, the easier it becomes to show up again. And if you let one slip-up derail you, it's like stopping that train completely. The more you allow yourself to stop, the harder it is to start again. The rule is simple: never miss twice. When you do, you keep the momentum alive. This approach works in every area of your life, whether it's work, personal goals, relationships, or health. The key is consistency, and the never miss twice rule is your safeguard. Every time you show up, you're reinforcing your commitment to the task, your discipline, and your ability to push through challenges. The more often you show up, the less room procrastination has to take hold. And when you do slip up, you'll be ready to get back on track quickly, keeping your momentum strong. By embracing the never miss twice rule, you're giving yourself permission to fail without giving up. You're committing to progress, not perfection, and that's the key to overcoming procrastination. The next time you slip up, don't let it define you. Get back on track immediately, because as long as you never miss twice, you'll keep moving forward, no matter how many times you stumble along the way.
Chapter 13. How to stop overthinking and take instant action. Procrastination often creeps up on us when we let our minds run wild with thoughts that spiral out of control. The more we think, the more we tend to doubt ourselves, overanalyze, and freeze up in the process. It's like staring at a mountain and wondering how you'll ever climb it, only to end up not even trying. The truth is, You're not stuck in a cycle of procrastination because you're lazy or incapable. You're stuck because you've overthought yourself into inaction. The key to breaking this pattern is surprisingly simple. Stop thinking and start doing. Overthinking is a common problem for many people. It's that constant mental chatter that leaves you paralyzed. You think about everything that could go wrong, all the things you need to get done, and the endless list of what-ifs. This constant analysis ends up being a barrier to action. Instead of jumping in and figuring it out as you go, you remain stuck in the thought process, afraid of making a mistake. But here's the thing, you don't need to have it all figured out right away. You don't need to know the next 10 steps. You just need to take the first one. The moment you can break free from overthinking and just act, you'll realize that most of the fear was imagined. The task that once seemed overwhelming becomes manageable once you take that first step. It's like getting into a cold pool. At first it's uncomfortable, but once you're in, you start adjusting. The same happens when you take action. You may not know all the answers, but as soon as you begin, the path will begin to reveal itself. This is one of the most powerful tools in overcoming procrastination. Stop thinking and start doing. The longer you wait, the more time you give your mind to make excuses, to doubt and to delay. The quicker you act, the less time your mind has to create all of those roadblocks. A simple trick to cut through the noise is to focus on the very first action, no matter how small. Forget about the entire project or goal for a moment. Break it down to the simplest task, something so small that it's hard to resist. Maybe it's opening a document, writing one sentence, or getting up and putting on your shoes. The goal is to focus only on that first action and nothing else. Once you complete that small step, you'll feel a sense of accomplishment. That feeling is important because it shows your brain that it's capable of doing the task, and that initial success helps overcome the inertia that holds you back. Once you've made that first move, the rest becomes easier. It's like setting the ball in motion. From there, it's all about building momentum. The problem with overthinking is that it tricks your brain into believing that it's the same as actually doing something. You feel like you're accomplishing something just by thinking about it. But thinking doesn't move you closer to your goals. Action does. Imagine a car that's stuck in the mud. You can think about it for hours, worry about how deep the mud is, or how hard it'll be to get out. But nothing will change until you start moving the car, no matter how small the movement is at first. Action is the key to breaking free from that stuck feeling. This isn't to say that thinking doesn't have its place. Planning and strategizing are important steps in achieving your goals. However, there comes a point when planning becomes an excuse for not taking action. It's a form of procrastination in disguise. Overthinking leads you down a rabbit hole of endless scenarios and worst-case outcomes, and in the end, nothing gets done. If you find yourself doing this, take a step back and remind yourself that planning without action is pointless. You can't strategize your way out of everything. Sometimes you just have to dive in and learn as you go. To make this a habit, train yourself to act without hesitation. This can be tough at first, especially if you've been caught in the trap of overthinking for a long time. But the more you practice it, the easier it gets. Start by committing to small, immediate actions. The goal is to take the first step quickly, before your mind has time to talk you out of it. Instead of sitting there wondering what the best way to approach something is, just do something. It doesn't have to be perfect. In fact, it likely won't be. But that's not the point. The point is to move. The more you do this, the more you'll see that action leads to clarity. You don't need to have all the answers up front. The answers will come as you move forward. Another aspect of overthinking that keeps people stuck is the fear of making mistakes. This fear often paralyzes you before you even begin. But here's something important to remember. Mistakes are part of the process. Every successful person you admire has failed and made mistakes along the way. Failure isn't the enemy, it's part of the journey towards success. So instead of fearing mistakes, embrace them. Each mistake is a lesson, a chance to grow. When you shift your mindset to see mistakes as opportunities for learning, you stop allowing them to hold you back. Now consider how you might feel when you finally take action. At first it might feel uncomfortable or even scary. But as you begin to move forward, you'll realize that most of the things you were worried about were not as big of a deal as you thought. The task becomes more manageable because you're actively engaging with it. And in the process, you gain confidence. Every time you take that first step, you prove to yourself that you are capable, and that confidence compounds. The next time a task arises, you won't hesitate as much because you've built a history of taking action, no matter how small the task. The real beauty of stopping overthinking and starting to act is that it sets you free. You break out of the loop of analysis and paralysis. You take back control of your time and energy. And when you make this a regular practice, procrastination loses its grip on you. Every time you push through the urge to overthink and take action instead, you strengthen your resilience and your ability to follow through. It may seem small at first, but those small steps lead to big results. Over time, you'll look back and see that you've not only accomplished more, but you've also become someone who doesn't wait for the perfect moment, because you know that the best moment to act is always right now. Chapter 14. The secret of people who always get things done. Some people always seem to get things done. No matter the task, no matter how difficult, they just seem to power through and keep pushing forward. If you've ever wondered how they do it, the truth is simpler than it appears. They've figured out something important. They've mastered a fundamental principle of success that everyone can learn. And it doesn't require magic, luck, or a special talent, just a consistent way of thinking and acting. The secret is not about being perfect or having everything figured out from the start. It's not about waiting for the right mood or the perfect conditions. The secret lies in one powerful habit: action. Successful people don't overcomplicate things. They don't wait for motivation to strike or for things to fall into place. They take action. And the more action they take, the easier it gets. It sounds simple, right? But the power of consistent action is the foundation of everything they do. When you're always taking action, you shift the focus from the outcome to the process. This takes the pressure off. Instead of getting lost in the endless worries about whether you're doing the right thing or if it's going to work out, you focus on the small, manageable steps in front of you. You build momentum, and with momentum comes progress. The more progress you make, the more motivated you feel, and the more motivated you feel, the more you do. It's a cycle that feeds itself, but it starts with that first step, that initial choice to take action. Successful people have learned to embrace the small tasks, the ones that don't feel glamorous or exciting. They understand that consistency is the real secret weapon. They don't wait for big opportunities to come knocking at their door. They create their own opportunities by consistently showing up, no matter how small the task or how little progress they seem to be making. Over time, those small steps add up. The compound effect of consistent action transforms them from people with great ideas to people who get things done. It's easy to get caught up in the idea that success comes from a burst of brilliance, a sudden wave of inspiration, or some rare moment of genius.
But in reality, success comes from showing up every day, doing the work, and making incremental improvements. It's not about waiting for everything to be perfect or hoping for motivation to appear. It's about putting in the effort, even when you don't feel like it. Even when the task seems boring or insignificant, it's about doing the work because you know that consistency pays off. The key to making this work for you is shifting your mindset. Stop seeing action as something that's reserved for only the most exciting or urgent tasks. Instead, see it as a way of life. Successful people don't view tasks through the lens of motivation. They don't wait for the perfect moment to act. They act now. They focus on the process, not the outcome. They understand that action, no matter how small, is what propels them forward. When you start taking consistent action, something magical happens. You start building confidence. Every small action you take reinforces the belief that you can get things done. And that confidence becomes a driving force. The more confident you become, the more you push yourself to take action. It's a self-reinforcing cycle. You take action, you see results, and those results give you the confidence to take even more action. It's not about waiting for external motivation to push you forward. It's about creating your own momentum. Another important aspect of consistent action is resilience. Success is rarely a straight line. There will be setbacks, mistakes, and obstacles along the way. But the key is not to let these obstacles stop you. Successful people know that failure isn't the end of the road, it's part of the process. When you take action regularly, you learn to bounce back faster. You don't get stuck in your mistakes, you learn from them and move on. The more you fail and get back up, the stronger you become. It's the act of consistently getting back in the game that leads to success, not the avoidance of failure. This principle can be applied to any area of life, whether it's work, health, relationships, or personal development. Consistent action is the thread that ties all successful people together. It doesn't matter if they're building a business, writing a book, or training for a marathon. The secret is the same: they show up every day, even when they don't feel like it. They do the work regardless of how they're feeling. Over time, those actions compound and the results speak for themselves. If you want to start making progress toward your goals, the first step is to stop waiting. Stop waiting for the perfect moment, the right feeling, or the ideal circumstances. Start taking action right now, with what you have. Even if you feel uncertain or uncomfortable, do it anyway. Take that first step. Take a small action and then another. The more you do this, the easier it becomes. You'll start to see that the results don't always come from big dramatic actions. Often it's the small consistent steps that lead to the biggest changes. The power of consistent action is that it builds a solid foundation. Over time, you'll look back and realize that the success you've achieved didn't come from one lucky break or one big moment of inspiration. It came from all the small actions you took, day after day. The more you show up and do the work, the more you prove to yourself that you're capable. And that sense of capability becomes a powerful motivator in itself. So when you look at the people who always seem to get things done, remember that it's not magic. It's not that they have some special ability. It's that they've learned the power of consistent action. And you can learn it too. You don't need to wait for motivation. You don't need to wait for the perfect circumstances. You just need to take action. Do something, no matter how small, and then do it again. Over time, you'll see that action is the key to breaking through procrastination and creating real lasting change in your life.
Chapter 15. The 5-minute end-of-day review. You can spend an entire day being busy and still feel like you got nothing meaningful done. The hours pass, tasks pile up, and by the time the day ends, exhaustion sets in. Yet there's this nagging feeling that nothing truly moved forward. This happens because, without reflection, without looking back at what was actually accomplished, the mind remains scattered. The key to real progress isn't just in doing, it's in understanding what was done, what worked, and what needs to be improved. The process of reviewing your day isn't just a productivity hack, it's a mindset shift that helps you take control of your time instead of letting it control you. Most people underestimate how powerful a simple 5-minute habit can be. The tendency is to either ignore the past entirely or dwell on mistakes without extracting anything useful from them. But reflection isn't about judgment, it's about clarity. It's about recognizing patterns, seeing where time was wasted, acknowledging where energy was well spent, and making sure the next day is better than the last. The difference between those who stay stuck and those who grow isn't in how hard they work, it's in how well they learn from their own experience. When you start reviewing your days consistently, you begin to notice small things that you might have otherwise ignored. The distractions that stole your focus. The moments where you hesitated when you should have acted. The unnecessary overthinking that delayed decisions. Noticing these patterns gives you power, because once you see them, you can change them. When the day ends, the mind is often either restless or exhausted. Some people feel guilty about what they didn't do, while others are too drained to even think. But the mind needs closure. It needs a signal that the day is complete, that everything has been processed, and that tomorrow can start fresh. Without this, stress builds up. Unfinished tasks carry over like extra weight. Loose ends create mental clutter, making it harder to focus when the next day begins. The simple act of reviewing the day and setting a clear plan for the next prevents this. It's like organizing your thoughts, the way you'd organize a messy desk. Things stop feeling overwhelming because everything has a place. One of the most effective ways to make reflection a habit is to ask yourself a few simple but powerful questions. What did I accomplish today? What could I have done better? What are my top priorities for tomorrow? These aren't questions to overthink. They are questions to answer instinctively, based on what naturally comes to mind. If you start doing this daily, patterns emerge. You start seeing what consistently holds you back. You start recognizing what actions lead to the most progress. It's like having a personal coach in your own head, guiding you towards smarter decisions without needing anyone else's input. The beauty of this habit is that it doesn't require much effort. It's not about writing long journal entries or analyzing every small detail. 5 minutes is enough. 5 minutes to pause, reflect, and reset. In those 5 minutes, you give yourself the opportunity to process everything without carrying unnecessary stress into the next day. You give yourself a mental checkpoint, a way to separate one day from the next, so that every morning begins with a clear direction instead of scattered thoughts. Many people think that productivity is about squeezing more tasks into their day, but real productivity is about doing the right things consistently. If you don't reflect, you don't know if you're moving in the right direction. You might be busy, but busyness without progress is just another form of procrastination. When you take the time to look at what's working and what's not, you gain control over your results. You stop relying on random bursts of motivation and start creating a system that ensures success, even on days when you don't feel like putting in the effort. People who consistently grow are those who pay attention to their own progress. They don't just work blindly, they take note of what's effective and what isn't. They adjust their approach based on real experience, not just theory. And they don't see mistakes as failures, they see them as lessons. When you review your day,
You train your brain to think this way. Instead of getting frustrated about what didn't go well, you start asking, what can I learn from this? And that shift in mindset makes all the difference. A common mistake people make is believing that small habits like this won't make a difference. But that's the same thinking that keeps people stuck in cycles of procrastination. Change doesn't happen overnight. It happens through small, consistent actions that compound over time. 5 minutes of reflection might seem insignificant, but done daily, it reshapes the way you think and act. It creates awareness, and awareness is what leads to change. When you become more aware of how you spend your time, how you react to challenges, and what truly moves you forward, you naturally start making better choices. One of the biggest benefits of this habit is the sense of closure it brings. Instead of carrying unfinished thoughts and worries into the night, you end the day with a sense of completion. The brain works best when it knows what to focus on. When you reflect on what was done and set a clear intention for the next day, your subconscious keeps working in the background. You wake up with clarity instead of confusion. You start the day already knowing what matters, instead of wasting the first few hours figuring it out. Building this habit doesn't require discipline, it just requires consistency. It's easy to skip, easy to tell yourself it's not necessary. But the people who master their time, who stay focused, and who achieve their goals are the ones who hold themselves accountable. They make reflection part of their routine, not as an extra task, but as a necessary step toward improvement. The real transformation happens when this stops feeling like something you should do and starts feeling like something you can't go without.